Hello and welcome again to another episode of Fikava Vet Chat. Today I'm taking you to Croatia and I would like to talk to you about shelter medicine, an area of veterinary medicine I have personally not very much experience with, but it takes a large place, a large role in the life of a lot of our colleagues. One of these colleagues is Tatjana Zajec. She is leading the shelter in Zagreb in Croatia, and I'm very pleased to have her today in our episode of Fikava Vet Chat. Hi, Tatjana.
Hi, Wolfgang. Hi.
So I heard you have a little mountain retreat somewhere, and we catch you there, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in the Croatian mountains. It's a part of Croatia called Lika, very beautiful part. And my mom's from here, so I have a hut here.
Mm-hmm. Do you have snow at the moment?
Oh, over a meter. Yeah, a lot of snow.
Okay, just received a couple of days ago some photos from one of my colleagues, Steindal, the Norwegian Fikava director, and he had 2.5 meters snow around his hut, so he had to dig out his hut to get to the mountain hut. So yeah, some areas very lucky with the amount of snow they get. Anyway, we want to talk shelter medicine, and you're the person I know that probably has the most experience when it comes to shelters. And obviously you have this experience with the shelter in Zagreb. But first of all, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how your journey into veterinary medicine went.
Well, it's combined with the shelters, because since I was a child, I rescued animals, kittens mostly, puppies, and small wild animals. And then I decided to go to veterinary high school and then to university. And it was no doubt that I will be a veterinarian one day, because I didn't want to do anything else since I was very, very little. And then when I finished my university degree, the only place I wanted to work in was a shelter. And then in the past days in Croatia, we had only one shelter, and it was a Zagreb shelter. So I end up in that shelter, and I'm here since my graduation.
Yeah. This sort of puts me to shame, I have to say. I mean, in my case, yes, there was a desire to work with dogs and cats, and I was very interested sort of in the technical aspects of veterinary medicine, sort of the operating, for example, orthopedics. I was interested. So these were things that were driving me, but I was possibly didn't have so honorable sort of ideas why I wanted to do veterinary medicine. And I mean, there are so many aspects of veterinary medicine that are very, very sad. And I have to admit, I possibly was also mentally maybe not built for shelter medicine. So I don't know. Tell us a little bit about the shelter. It's the shelter of Zagreb, of Croatia's capital. Yes, you're working in.
Yeah. It's a municipality shelter, and the city of Zagreb is the owner of that shelter. So we have 27 people that work in the shelter, and we are dedicated to rehoming animals, mostly cats and dogs, because we don't have, we don't have the opportunity to try to do something more. Like we are at the edge of the European Union, and Serbia and Bosnia and Montenegro, we have a very long border, so there are lots of smuggling dogs across those borders. So we do what we can do in Zagreb, just to rehome some animals, and then put new ones in the shelter. So I think that's our main goal, to rehome as many animals as we can.
Uh, these animals you see in the shelter, what would you say? How is the percentage of dogs and cats that are coming just from Croatia, or that come also from other neighboring countries?
Well, I can tell you, when COVID pandemic started, and then lockdown started also, so there was no moving between cities in Croatia and between borders also, and we ended up with 30 dogs.
And
So,
what is your capacity?
and
Just in
capacity is
comparison?
around 120 dogs. So we were, it was a quarter of the of the amount of dogs we have today, for example, when borders are open. So I don't think we have a problem with the abandoned dogs. We don't have stray dogs. So all those animals are just keeping going from the other parts of Croatia and the other countries as well.
And background of these dogs, are these street dogs? Are these dogs that people don't want to have any longer? Are these I don't know what's the main background of these dogs.
Stray dogs are dogs that they are raised somewhere on the streets. We don't have that because we don't have so many dogs on streets. Most of them are abandoned ones, and because they are not microchipped, so we don't know who was the owner. And I think a big problem also is so many puppy litters that people can't can't rehome them, or I don't know, sell them. And that's for Zagreb. And for all the other cities and all the other parts of Croatia and other countries, those dogs are smuggled from, and they are mostly street dogs, roaming dogs, stray dogs from example, Serbia and maybe mostly Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how is that microchips sort of in Croatia? Is this a legal requirement that dogs have to be microchipped?
Yeah.
In Croatia?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. They need to be. They could be microchipped since 6 weeks old puppies, but I think it's from 3 months they need to be. They can't go anywhere without microchip. But you can see, because we have so many, we have over 120 dogs every day there, and we are a pretty small shelter. There are much bigger ones. For example, in Čakovec near Zagreb, they have maybe 500 dogs. And I know in Serbia they have some shelters over 1,000 dogs. It's insane. I don't know how can they do it, but I think that's the problem with microchipping. Not all the people do what they're required to do, unfortunately. And they know they will, they don't neuter their dogs, so that will end like this.
That's the other thing, sort of, with the attitude. I mean, with me sort of traveling around, I see huge sort of difference in the attitude towards neutering between the UK, where this is very common and that helps a lot, and less so in countries like Germany or also the Scandinavian countries. However, in the Scandinavian countries, although they are not neutering, they are, if they haven't neutered, they are very organized, usually with birth control measures, other measures, sort of hormone chips, for example, or hormone tablets for cats, for example, and things like that. So they don't seem to have such a big problem of unwanted kittens and puppies. in Germany, it's so that neutering is far less common than in the UK because of that. There are slightly more issues. Nevertheless, also that stray or the rescue dog problem doesn't seem to be such a huge what shall I say, sort of issue, and there is still a fair amount of capacity to get dogs in from other countries, Eastern Europe, for example. Having said that, obviously that carries in itself, again, problems, as we can see at the moment, sort of with diseases that were tick-borne, for example, and we are in the northern European countries not actually so familiar with, and these problems become more and more common. How does it look like when you get a dog in, say, from Bosnia, with no records? What are your sort of initial measures when you receive these dogs? What sort of examinations do they, what tests do they get? And then what sort of treatment is normally standard?
You know, I don't know which dog is from Bosnia and which one is from Zagreb, for example. So I don't care about that. We have some standard operative procedures for every dog that will come into our shelter, obviously, because we don't know anything about them. We don't know if they are vaccinated or they are not. Some of them, if we do know where they came from example, from Serbia, then we do some titer in a lab, so we know something about them. But we do every day the same thing. When we get a dog in the shelter, it's examined, and we call that zero day. You know, so on 0 day it must be vaccinated. That's a procedure that is very important for every shelter, because if you don't vaccinate animals immediately, you won't have anyone to vaccinate after 10 days, because they all will be dead. We can't do, you know, private practitioners, private veterinarians. They look at the animal and their owner, but we don't do that. We look at that particular animal, but we also look at the whole shelter, you know. So we it's a bit complicated, and then so we on the 0 day we vaccinate against all the infectious diseases, not rabies.
So that would be distemper, adenovirus, parvovirus. How is that Bordetella and parainfluenza? We do that as
also.
well.
Yeah, we do that also, because we need to focus, you know, both to that particular animal and then to general population, and it's important for them to get that vaccine as soon as possible. And that's also then for some antiparasitic treatment on the day one, and then we leave them, you know, for 10 days, maybe 14, and then vaccinate again. So we do that every 2 weeks.
Yeah. How is that with other non-core vaccinations, leptospirosis, leishmaniasis? Are you doing anything like that?
No, we don't have those problems, but every shelter or every part of the country has a different problem. So if that shelter is maybe somewhere at Mediterranean, like in Split, Dubrovnik, I think they should use non-core vaccines also, especially against leishmania, but we don't do that. We don't have to, because we don't have any problem. Yeah, so it's a different part of the country.
That's the thing. I mean, you have to weigh up sort of the finances. I mean, vaccines cost money, but then, as you said, I mean, it's not only about the dog; it's about the whole shelter. If you get an infection in there, and also, I mean, with diseases like yeah, rabies, for example. I mean, there's also a considerable zoonotic issue. How is the situation with rabies infections and vaccinations now on the Balkan? Have you still had any cases? Is it still something you might encounter or you do encounter in the shelter?
No, because we don't have rabies since 2011. And last year we became a rabies-free country. And from the last year, we can vaccinate our dogs every 3 years. I mean, no, every three. It depends on the vaccine we use. So it could be 2 or 3 years. And but we have still we have those borders that are very long, and it could, someday it could be a problem. But for now, it's okay, and we are a rabies-free country.
And then parasite disease protection. So also when they come in, regardless if they have any parasites, you have a protocol that they get treated against fleas, probably in any case, ticks as well.
Yeah. That on day zero, they got everything, and then we just look at them, and if we see a bit of problem, because every shelter could have a problem with the giardia, because it's very wet in a shelter. So we do some. So we do have some protocols also against that, and we will not rehome animal with any kind of parasite in a new home. As you know, some of them could be transmitted to humans also, so we take care of that.
Yeah, and I assume sort of when you get new dogs in, are they also kept in isolation, regardless where they come from for the first 1 or 2 weeks, or?
Yeah, it's around 10 days, maybe more, because we don't have enough space for every new. But the good thing is we have a new building that is built, and it should be it will be over till June. So hopefully we will have more room for dogs, more spaces. But I don't think that will help.
Yeah, how common are tick-borne diseases, sort of, or vector-borne? Let's put more vector-borne diseases with the dogs you get. So I'm thinking about anaplasma, Ehrlichia, borreliosis, something like that.
They are quite common. They're quite common. Not Ehrlichia or anaplasmosis, not so common, but it's pyroplasma. It's quite common in dogs in Croatia, especially around Zagreb. Some of the areas don't have any, like this one in Lika. They don't have those problems, but we in Zagreb we do. So we have a sick control, and we do it properly, and not just for dogs, so also for a whole shelter, for grass around the shelters. So we do treatment, all kind of treatments, just to take control of sicks.
Must have a huge sort of demand also for supplies then. So where do you get your supplies from? Your vaccines, your medication, all the disposables, sort of syringes, needles, all that stuff. Are these donations, or you probably can't just work on donations for an enterprise like this? So that's. Where do you get it from? Yeah.
Just you said, we are just a big enterprise, so we get that from the city of Zagreb, because we are municipality shelter, and shelter will pay for everything we need. So we have some big firms that are supplying us. They are working in whole Croatia, and some of them we work with, and so we don't have problems with any um, medications or anything. We do have everything we need. Fortunately,
Mhm.
that's not the problem. I think the main problem is we don't have enough space for so many dogs that need to come to our shelter. So that's the problem.
Mhm. Mhm. And then sort of the dogs you have, obviously, it's so that there's no point just to have them. Obviously, there needs to be a way forward to try to find a new home for them, a new life for them. So how many of these dogs then would you say remain in Croatia? Are you then moving some of these dogs further up to other European countries? Is there a network between the shelters to communicate? How does it work?
Well, yes, well, animal welfare is everything because uh, shelter is just it should be the place they will stay a day or two, but some of them unfortunately will stay much longer with us, especially those like Stafford terriers or bull terriers. These dogs are, they some of them are very dangerous to other dogs. Maybe most of them in our shelter are dangerous to other dogs, so it's not very easy to rehome them, and no other country will take them. And they can't go to Germany or Austria. There is no way. But we do have that network of other shelters that will take some other dogs that are just they are just fine. Their behavior is okay. They don't have any problem with the behavior, and we maybe one third of our dogs are home to other shelters, like in Vienna or somewhere in Germany, and
Hmm.
two-thirds will stay in Croatia, and we are trying to do our best just to give them the best home they deserve, of course. And then we train the other dogs that with the behavioral problems, and we do resocialization. We work with them. We have trainers, and we will rehome them eventually. But some of them will stay with us for 2 or 3 years, unfortunately, and that's quite a long, yeah.
Yeah, and it's obviously blocking up space for
Yeah.
other dogs then. Mhm. You said during COVID, the shelter was pretty empty, partially because you were just restricted to dogs that were coming in from Croatia or from the area of the municipality. But then also a lot of people who hadn't been dog or cat owners sort of suddenly felt, yeah, we need a dog, we need a cat also. So a lot of shelters reported that they were going empty. Having said that, now people realize, oh, wait a moment, it's not so easy. If you have a dog or a cat and you want to go on holidays, suddenly you have to make arrangements, and that's very inconvenient. So I don't know, have you experienced a backlash now, sort of after COVID, that suddenly sort of a lot of people are returning these COVID dogs, the puppies, the COVID puppies, COVID kittens, so dogs that specifically are, say, a couple of years old, where you can say, yes, born 2020, but now they become an inconvenience, or is it more hearsay?
Yeah, that's all true. But when COVID pandemic started, I talked to Dr. Vladimir Stevanovic. He works at Department of Microbiology and Infectious Diseases at Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, and he's a great guy. We talked about that COVID situation. So we have media on our side, and we talked and we wrote about that there is no education that dogs have any role as a source of human infection. So we tried to rehome our dogs as best as possible, and without those problems that will come later, for example, for today. So we don't have much more, abandoning than we had before that pandemic.
Mhm.
But there are some other reasons that could be a problem. For example, those people worked at home and now they need to work somewhere in their firm, and they didn't teach their dogs
Own.
proper behavior, so they have some problems with the separation anxiety, for example, and it's very hard to treat those behavioral problems as long as they um, as, it's a problem if if you worked for a year from home, so you need a year to to learn a dog how to get out from that separation anxiety. So it's not very easy, but we do have some good trainers in Croatia, and some of people just they love their dogs. They're just part of their family, and they will do anything to help them. Not all of them, of course. Some of them are ended abandoned and in the shelter, but then we tried to rehome them to some older people that are home all the time, so they have much more people in that house. It could be a grandma and grandfather also, and children, and those dogs that trying to cope more efficiently. Yeah, so we work on that. It's not easy, so we do that for every dog that need a new home.
That's such a valid aspect, actually. I didn't think about that, but that's true. I mean, you're all the time working from the home office, and you have the dog around. The dog knows you're around all the time. Suddenly, you have to go out again. You have to be away for several hours, if not the whole day, and maybe just somebody might come in between to walk the dog. Interesting aspect, yeah. What would you say, sort of, what are the biggest problems or the biggest challenges you have sort of in your day-to-day work? Sort of, if you could just not have, I don't know, if you could cancel something out that just would never be an issue, sort of, what would be your top list? I don't know.
I think that would be that would be maybe decisions that I need to make every day about life and death. There are so many injured animals that will come to a shelter, and they are very sick. They're very ill, and some of them we can treat. They can do better, but some of them can't. So those decisions are very hard, and there are so many emotions involved in it. And I can see now, because I work almost 20 years in the shelter, so I can see now that affects me as a person. It's very hard for me to make those decisions on daily basis. Very, very difficult for me. I know that because I'm going to my neurologist now because of my migraines, and she said to me that the that's the that the difficulties of my job, those decisions. So I don't know how to handle it, handle
Mm,
those emotional problems. It's not very easy. And
mm,
people often can't see what veterinarians can see.
mm,
You would see obviously a bad state that animal is in it, but people can't. So they want to do more for us, to try more, and it's sometimes it's very expensive, and it's very hard. I think that's the most it's a horrific, sometimes when you have 3 or 4 animals per day, then you need to take the responsibility of that life.
Where do you see the sort of shelter of the future? What do you see any sort of big changes coming up in the next sort of 10, 20, 30 years, which might change shelter medicine one way or the other? I don't know, sort of that different protocols or different shelter designs or systems or something like that. Do you think there will be any huge changes we can prepare ourselves for?
Well, I'm going to Cambridge in the next week. We'll talk there about shelter medicine, and we'll see what will future will bring to us. But it's a quite big difference between Eastern Europe and Western Europe. It's a difference. For example, in UK, you talked about that because they have so many, so many decades of animal welfare, and they have shelters since Queen Victoria, for example, and we don't do that. We don't have that in Croatia, and in Eastern Europe even less than we do. So it won't be some kind of big breakthrough, because we all need just one thing for that, and that's money. So when I heard about Queen Victoria, then they're trying to save those dogs back then. It's a huge. They had a huge opportunity, and they had enough money to do much more. For example, some of the shelters are state of the art now. They don't have fences, so dogs and cats there can live like they live in their own home, and here that's not the case. It's all about money, of course, but I hope that the shelter medicine will maybe get more incorporated in everyday veterinary life, like in Germany and in Croatia also. Never mind, because I know veterinarians are just not used to shelter medicine. They think that's the same medicine they practice, they do, but it's quite different, So it wasn't once I have heard, you don't know anything, that's not the protocol, we can't do that. And I thought, well, guys, that's a shelter medicine. You need to get used to the shelter medicine. You need to talk to shelter veterinarians and help them, because that's not easy.
No, and that's one thing is theory, the other thing is practice. Can you there are a lot of good ideas how to do one or the other thing, but then you hit issues with maybe manpower. You might not have enough people to do what you want, funding, supplies, and legislation. I mean, there are so many factors that come in that
education.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was an exciting tour through shelter medicine. Tatjana, thank you very much for speaking to me. If anybody has questions about this or any other episodes of Fikava VetChat, please do email us on vetchat@fikava.org, or alternatively leave a message on our social media outlets. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Fikava VetChat, and I hope to see we will meet again soon for another episode of Fikava VetChat in a place somewhere else in Europe. Thank you very much.